Hello, I am Suzanne Hilser-Wiles, President of Grenzebach Lear and Associates, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the latest edition of our Thought Leadership Series. If you have questions, please submit them via the Q&A button at the top or bottom of your screen. We won't have time to answer questions during the session, but we will post responses on our website in the days ahead. I am joined today by Nina Diefenbach, Senior Vice President and Deputy Director for Advancement at the Barnes Foundation. Nina joined the Barnes 5 years ago, following a 34-year career at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where she spent her last 12 years as Vice President for Institutional Advancement. Nina is not only one of the most well-regarded leaders in arts fundraising nationally, but she is also a generous colleague and mentor who has helped develop talent throughout her career. I first met Nina almost 25 years ago when she agreed to an informational interview, which eventually led to me joining her team at the Met. Surely one of the luckiest meetings of my career. So I am really happy to have you here today, Nina.
Hello,
all right.
Suzanne.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm going to jump right in. Nina, can you begin by telling our listeners a little bit about your program at the Barnes?
Sure. Well, the Barnes is a collection of Impressionist and Post-Impressionist art, which we are most famous for, and you can see this in my background here. Cezanne. However, it is important to point out that we have African art, we have Native American art, we have Asian art, we have old masters. There's an extensive drawings collection. So we represent the collections of Dr. Barnes, who established the foundation in 1922. It is his personal collection. It is all filled with his quixotic and interesting and extraordinary vision in terms of collecting. It is eclectic, and that's part of its charm. It is a collection that is displayed, and I hope if any of you go on our website, you can see pictures of it, where there are no labels. There are no explanations given. You have to go through, and you are forced, which is Dr. Barnes' intention, you are forced to think about the works of art with your own background and education being put to the test. And so it's very intentional that way. And he really wants you to think about and connect the different colors, line, shape, subject matters of the different paintings. And so the walls are ensembles, and they're multi-layered, all different sizes. There's also a very important collection of metalwork also on display. So it's an eclectic collection, and it is not your traditional museum display like you would see at the Met, for example. So but it brings with it so many opportunities for exploration, which has really been a godsend during the last year.
How big is your team, Nina, in advancement at the Barnes?
It is, we have 17 people over doing development, membership, communications, and so that's divided by people working on the capital campaign, on major gifts, on leadership gifts, on corporate fundraising, development services, prospect research, foundation support, grants, government grants. And so it's, as well as communications and PR. So it's a big team. There are about 110 or 120 full-time staff at the Barnes. We have a $20 million budget, and the advancement team is responsible for raising 52% of that operating budget.
Wow, that's formidable. And how many members do you have at the Barnes?
Right now we have about 14 or 15,000. Going into the pandemic, we maybe had 16,000. So we've lost some, but not a lot. Our members have been extraordinarily loyal, and that has been incredibly important throughout this. So it's been, we've been incredibly grateful to the donors who have stood by us throughout this time.
So the Barnes has done a really fantastic job of pivoting to increased online programming. In fact, actually, when I talk to people across the globe about the things that they've done that have made this time more bearable, more enjoyable, I've had a lot of people talk about the Barnes programming. So what are you doing to build on that great success in development and advancement?
Well, in the middle of March, when we all went home, and had to go with this, and we shut the Barnes, there was a very distinct effort within no less than 7 days. We were immediately put out something called, what we called Barnes Takeout. And it was our curators and our educators using their iPhones from home to talk about an individual work of art. We posted that on YouTube every day. And we immediately started promoting that. Those of us on the advancement side, just as a way to continue to engage people and have people continue to, well, be intellectually fulfilled and maybe provide a nice, enjoyable short respite from the other pressures of the pandemic. And we have, throughout 2020, we had over 400,000 views of these Barnes Takeouts.
Wow.
They're posted all on our YouTube channel. So people can go back and look at them. There's an inventory of them. So you can search out your most favorite artist, or if there's a particular painting that you know well from the Barnes collection that you'd like to hear the scholar talk about. And so we really have inventoried those, but we really tried, that was an immediate pivot. Another pivot that we did very quickly was our adult education classes. We offer, and this is probably how you're hearing people engaging in the Barnes. We created month-long classes that were focused on any number of different subjects. And they're not only things that are devoted to our collection, we also had them inspired by our special exhibitions and other scholars. And, with that, and I can just, we reached out and we have secured and grown our audience significantly. We've come from 39 different states. We've had multiple international participants in these adult education classes. And we also were able to offer scholarships to this. And we had over 300 scholarships of the 1,800 to 2,000 people who took these classes. Now, remember, when we were open to the public and before the pandemic, our classes were only in situ. So they were only in the galleries or in our auditorium or in our classrooms. And what we were able to do is have hundreds and hundreds of people join these classes, which we had previously not been able to do.
That's fantastic.
So
Are they recorded, Nina, or are they happening live for the participants?
They are recorded. They're live. And then if you happen to miss a class, they are recorded for the participant
or if it's
class.
The middle of the night for you.
That's right.
You can still participate.
Right.
That's fantastic. 39 states and a global audience for a program that was probably only accessible if you lived in, the suburbs of Philadelphia before, or if you were willing to make a trip. That's really amazing.
I mean, we're still doing our longer classes, the more than 4 weeks, because we also have a certificate program and other things, and those have been equally as successful. But the ones that were really compelling were the ones that were the shorter period of time on a specific intense subject.
And were they people, Nina, that you think had been members or were members, or were these people largely that were new to the Barnes? Do you have a
Many
sense of
were new.
that?
I would say about 50% were became members
Yeah. Uh-huh.
or were members. We also garnered a lot of annual fund gifts from this.
That's
So
terrific.
particularly for those people who lived further away, um,
Mm-hmm.
people would just say, in addition to obviously paying the de minimis amount to take the class, um,
Mm-hmm.
people would just write in and send their smaller donations, but multiples of them, just saying that the class is just such a joy to be a part of. And so we actually did try and engage people more that way. We
Uh-huh.
did pivot we had a digital membership program
Mm-hmm.
portal that we created. Frankly, we were working on that before the pandemic, before
Mm-hmm.
March, but boy, this sort of speeded it up.
Yep.
Take advantage of a moment, and that digital membership portal has helped engage a lot of people into the
Right.
institution.
Is that a special kind of membership, digital membership, or is it
Yeah.
just a way to access your membership benefits?
It's
Yeah,
just a way
that's
to
great.
access and centralize the offerings so that people can do that. And once we opened that digital member portal,
Mm-hmm.
also is where people could get their tickets for admission, because of
Oh,
course
wow.
everything became ticketless, and so
Mm-hmm.
it became another forum for providing that service to members.
You've created the virtual members lounge. So, so are you going to continue on with these virtual programs after the museum is able to be more open again?
Absolutely, absolutely. Have to take advantage when something's good. We've got to
Yeah.
continue to do it. Now, we are gonna go back to classes on site,
Hmm.
but we're definitely gonna do the virtual classes for adults. And we're also, I didn't talk about pivoting to something we call Barnes Art Adventures, which is our K through 12 programming for school children. Um,
Hmm.
and we have a very strong program with the School District of Philadelphia, but what our virtual program allowed was people around the country, school teachers around the country to
Hmm.
engage as well. So we're going to be continuing that in addition to our adult education classes. And another whole component, which we haven't discussed yet, is the virtual lectures and
Yeah.
other ways that we kept donors and members engaged, and the general public. I mean, frankly, we
Hmm.
opened a lot of these up to the general public as
Hmm.
well, these virtual lecture offerings. And we're going to continue to do that. We found that many scholars, we had a deeper reach into securing scholars who might not
Hmm.
otherwise want to travel
Sure.
to Philadelphia, that they were very happy to do things from their home. Um, and I have to give kudos to our IT and AV program at the Barnes, our team there, because it's a lot of logistics. There's a lot of
Hmm.
infrastructure that needs to be set in place. And the Barnes has always been committed to this. And so we were ready going into the
Hmm.
pandemic in a way that I've seen some other institutions have to um, not being quite so ready and not being able to immediately pivot the way we were. So,
Yeah, that's a really important point, Nina. I think, we across our work with arts institutions, we see lots of places that have really struggled around that investment in some of these infrastructure things. And you're right, it made a material difference in how quickly organizations were able to take their really rich content and turn it into something that was accessible. And I mean, yours is such a success story in reaching people well beyond your membership, well beyond the people who already knew you, perhaps even,
mhm,
and engaging them in this really deep way and being a real source of joy for folks during this
mhm,
really hard year. I mean,
mm.
that's got to be totally gratifying for your curators and program people as well. That's really
Yeah, and
terrific.
I think people were so willing to share their feelings, and we
Hmm.
had so many wonderful letters and emails and correspondence that have really were inspiring for the staff
I
because,
bet. I
you know,
bet.
it was draining, this whole effort. And
Hmm.
arts and culture institutions really suffered during this pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think to have that positive word those positive words coming in our direction was really inspiring and really kept us motivated day in and day out to create new programming on these lines, to continue to explore what will work,
Yeah.
and also what might not work. You know,
Right.
and I think in most cases everything worked, unless you had technical glitches. But
Right. Nina and I are laughing because we had that right before this. My internet went out right as we were about to go live, and she said, "What do I do if that happens during this call?" But I think the fact that you all were able to maintain, such a high percentage of membership or maintain the numbers is a real testament to the fact that people saw real value in that programming. Often we talk about particularly entry-level membership as being more of a value proposition, and which is really around visitorship. And so the fact that you've maintained almost your entire membership base says to me that you've been able to show real value at every level, not just among people who are maybe more deeply engaged by the Barnes, but people see a real value in what you're doing and being associated with the institution, which is, such a wonderful place. But that's a huge testament to what you all have been doing. So this has been such a tumultuous year, and it's posed a lot of management challenges. So in addition to the online programming, which we were just talking about, what do you see as being different coming out of this period? What have you been focused on? What do you think you'll keep? And maybe what are some of the things that you think, well, we either tried that and it didn't work, or that was great for this period, but probably not right for the Barnes going forward?
Well, what comes top of mind is the annual fundraising benefit,
Mhm.
which was we have the Barnes Art Ball in
Mhm.
October, and this past October it had to be all virtual. And of
Yeah.
course, going into the March closing, we didn't know how long, none of us knew how long all that was going to be. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until July that we realized, oh my goodness, we are going to have to do the entire Barnes Art Ball online. And I have some amazing colleagues who really, we all got together and really brainstormed how to do this and sought outside help on how to do this. But we created programming that was 1 hour, only 1 hour, where we solicited artists within the Philadelphia community to contribute videos. And we did pay them a de minimis amount, but they were all happy to do it. Um,
Mhm.
and we had programming that we filmed within the building, and interviews with our director, and our curators. But it turned out to be very successful. We had 530 people participate in a
Wow.
1 hour program on a Friday night in October, and we had drop-in cocktail chats.
Yeah.
We called them cocktail chats.
Uh-huh.
So those were and we raised $500,000. And I think, but I can tell you with enormous relief, we are not going to do that this October. We are going to come back on site. And I think we may have fewer people.
Mhm.
We don't want to, in the year before, in 2019, we had 660 people at this event. I doubt we'll do that. And we're going to
Yeah.
really try and utilize the outdoors to try and make it as safe as possible for everybody and make everybody feel comfortable. We're splitting the event so that if people feel uncomfortable coming to the evening on the Friday night, we're going to offer a Saturday brunch as part of
Mhm.
your ticket so that you can come in and see the exhibition that we are going to be featuring in the fall and be able to see it in a context that you might feel safer with.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that we are definitely changing. And I think we're going to also continue to do, as I said, virtual lectures, but we're
Mhm.
also going to do lectures on site.
Mhm.
We're trying
Yeah.
now to figure out with our talented AV and IT team how to do both. So how to make
Mhm.
it both a virtual and an on-site lecture happening at the same time with the same speakers. Um, We're going to continue to do our classes on site, or not continue to, we're going to return to having our classes on site, but we're also going to do them virtually. That's going to continue to happen. And, I think we're working with our community partners to figure out other ways that we can continue to engage these audiences who might otherwise feel geographically unable to get to the barns. So I think we're going to be a hybrid, and we're working through day by day how we're going to do that. But there's no question we don't want to give up at all that incredible engagement that we've been able to leverage through all the virtual programming. We want to continue to offer all these resources and knowledge in our scholarship with the public.
Yeah, well, and I think in this moment where museums are really being called to continue to show their true commitment to community engagement, I think the access that the online programming offers, as you pointed out, to schools, to people who do not live in a major metropolitan area, that is a critical way that you serve a real broad audience with your mission. I don't want to scoop by though the event question, because I will tell you that is one of the most common questions we are getting from our arts clients right now. What are people doing with their events? And I want to make sure that everybody in putting the pieces together, what Nina said, they have an event and they have a very robust fundraising program, which is not just the event. Right. So Nina, as particularly some of our mid and smaller organizations, which have been just historically fundraising has been so tied to events. And now is a moment when they've been able to move a little further back. Do you have some advice for development directors in making the case to their boards or their presidents about, why events are a good part of the mix? But going back to programs that are so dependent on events is just a problem.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think you do need to not emphasize events in the way that maybe some institutions have. I've always felt that you had to have a plethora of opportunities for people, because there are a lot of people who aren't necessarily interested in events, but are interested in the scholarship and are interested in the institution, but don't really need or feel they want to be a part of an event per se. So I would say that you should leverage the pandemic as an example of where there could be no events, and maybe in our case we did get less money in for the event component, and we made up the money. Granted, some of it was emergency funding. But I do think foundations have stepped forward in a way that has been so important, and really returning to mission. Think about your mission and really emphasize mission, which is certainly a good thing to do in an event, but you can do it in so many other ways too. And the mission is what really engages donors generally in the life of institutions. And so keeping your programming focused on mission, and thinking about any new programming you might be able to do that's not so tied to, a fundraiser of benefit, but also events themselves. I think there will always be, for institutions that have special exhibitions, I think there is this moment where you will always have an exhibition opening. You should do that. And members previews and all those things should stay in place. But I just think it's now opened up the possibilities, and there's so many success stories out there, and look in your various communities where you come from and point to other institutions that are having success without having to rely so much on income from events.
Yeah. And one of the things that we see is there's often this closely held belief in institutions that the money that comes from events is coming from people who will only support the institution through events. And you alluded to that. But when we come in and actually do the analysis, have these people given other ways? Do they have a deeper institutional relationship, like they're a trustee? Often we find that it's a pretty small proportion of donors who are actually motivated by the fundraising event. I think, your point about there's a difference between a fundraising event and the engagement, appreciation, stewardship is absolutely spot on. So I hope that our institutions will continue to think about the appropriate role of an event and what can only an event accomplish versus we don't know what else to do, so we'll have an event. We recently did a study for an institution which, on paper looked like it had a great major gift staffing, but when you really talk to people, about half their year was spent running an event. So, it was frustrating from the trustee standpoint. We've invested in major gifts, but really because there's a time sensitivity around all the activity with an event. That's what the major gifts officers are having to spend their time on. So I would use this moment to do an analysis of who's given to you this year and could you get them to give that way again, so that we're really thoughtful post-pandemic. Well, Nina, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to be with you. I want to thank Nina, the GG+A team that produces our webinars, and all of you for joining us. Again, please send us any questions via the Q&A button or our website. And I invite you to connect with Nina, with me, and with GG+A on LinkedIn. If you would like to talk to us about any of the issues that were raised here today and have someone from our team talk to your team about how you might tackle some of the things that Nina and her team have been working on at the Barns, please reach out to us via LinkedIn or the web. Thanks so much. Thanks, Nina. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.